Okay. I think it's working. So thank you, Professor Preiser-Kapeller, to you accepted to have this conversation with me about platforms, digital platform that could help studying or also maybe doing research about the past. So about what we call history.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation.
And yeah, I've prepared some questions. As I said, I've just completed my bachelor's in history in Italy. And I was wondering if there is a sort of traditionalism about how historians research, or how they teach history. Because I saw that you did something new. You tried to show data in a different way, not just with a book, with a normal book.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, we are still more or less in the tradition which was developed in the 19th century, where what we now call the critical way of doing history was established. So especially the critical examination of the sources, that you go to the sources, read them in their original language, that you critically evaluate their content, what is their context, and that on this basis, in the 19th century, the idea was still that on this basis, you should be able to reconstruct how it actually was in the past, so that we really get towards facts about what happened in the past. Of course, this promise has very much been come into doubt in the last decades, especially after World War II, when it also became clear that the hitherto very national paradigm in history also led to very unpleasant consequences, also the political abuse of history. And what became clear then is that it is not that easy to say that textual sources, and historians are mostly based on textual sources, in contrast to archaeologists, that they can easily be made to talk about facts of the past, because as was also already clear in the 19th century, they have a specific context, there's a specific narrative, and this even led to claims that it is impossible to say something definite about the past, but that we are mainly dealing with narratives and with discourses. So what was called the postmodernist approach, especially after the 1960s. And on the other hand, what was always there was still an attempt in some parts of history, especially economic history, to work with quantitative methods, to really quantify what we can find in the sources. Of course, that's easy to do with statistical material of the last 200 years, but also for earlier periods, to really make definite claims about the past still in a quantitative way. But this came somehow into a conflict with this postmodernist approach to a certain extent, and it was hard to legitimize still to try to approach the past in a more quantitative way, to say, okay, these are actual facts beyond narratives, beyond discourses. And I guess that's still an ongoing debate, also with the recent developments with regard to digital humanities, and attempts really to also visualize or demonstrate historical facts in a digital way, where you have a statistics, where you have a map, and say this is how we can reconstruct it from the past. But of course, at the same time, there was a strong growth of digital methods in the last decades. But I would say this discourse is still ongoing, what we're actually doing when we are doing history. If we are still really able to identify facts of the past and also then to convey them in our teaching, or what we can teach students is how to deal with narratives and discourses. So how people in the past were debating about their time, but it's hard really to get beyond these towards the facts. That's still an ongoing issue, and you have various schools and turns also in history. So it has become much more complicated and also much more diversified than it was in the origin in the 19th century, I would say.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking, and this, I think it's related to the previous question, if there could be different ways about how we study the past. And in a way, you already answered, because yeah, there is the economic approach. So with data, it's maybe more scientific in a way, but still where the data comes from. So there is there are still problems. And I was wondering if with this new digital humanities approach, it could be more human-centered, I mean, the learning of history. Because let's say AI could start from our own level, our own knowledge. So it could be more, we could be the center of the teaching.
I mean
learning.
That it could be more individualized. So also
yes,
individual interest, individual previous knowledge, and that then an artificial intelligence system would very flexibly react to what a person already knows, or what would be the interest. So
yes, because we would not have the frontal lesson, where students have different kind of knowledge, and so maybe AI could help us to resolve this. And yeah, I don't know if you ever thought about this, if you have anything to say, or
so of course I think that's the wide field of machine human interaction, which is it's a field of this discussion in itself. To so this feedbacks between an artificial intelligence or a machine system and a human individual. Of course we all have been exposed to this. If you now use I don't know, a customer's client in any big online website like the one named after a river in South America, you are talking with an artificial intelligence. And what I first encountered this some years ago, because a friend of mine is an IT specialist, and he was developing such systems for the health system, the public health system in Vienna, where the idea was that people who came to the website of the public health service in Vienna first would encounter an artificial intelligence system, which would then help them to get to the right say institution in the end, and also taking into account different levels, for instance, of command of German. Of course, Vienna being a city of various migration communities, this is an issue, but also different, say, people have different ideas about terminology in medicine and so on. So I guess of course, these systems have been improved and can be very helpful. But as far as I understood, it's mostly about less than, it's more about replacing the necessity to have a big number of people who are actually behind phones with one system, which then individually can take care of the issues of customers, for instance. But still, the idea is to save time, to save resources with one big client system, which could help individuals. And when it comes to teaching, you mentioned this classroom situation when there's one professor in the front and you have, I don't know, 100, 200 students who all have different interests. Of course, the ideal situation would then be that in, I don't know, in another constellation, in a smaller seminar, in a smaller workshop, there would be a more individualized dialogue between the professor and in students. Or if for instance, you then are writing your MA thesis, your PhD thesis, where you normally have a one-to-one conversation with your supervisor. So this would be the ideal case, that there's more of this, so that you have this individual approach in a human situation. And of course, that's impossible in big universities. The University of Vienna has more than 100,000 students. That's not possible. But as far as I understood it now, the idea then could be that in order to more or less save time or money, not to invest more, that there would be, for instance, more teachers to help the students to have more of this one-to-one constellation with a human teacher, but to outsource this to a certain extent to an AI system. And then in the end, you have even less of this opportunity to then really get to the specialist or to the teacher or the professor, but you have to deal to a high extent with the AI system. So that, of course, that's not only the case maybe in the university, but also in many other settings. But this is what it could come to a certain extent. And if you talk with students, what they are eager to have is more of this one-to-one conversation with the professor, to talk about the individual interests.
Yes.
And because you always have in the end the economic pressure, and then especially in university systems. So that's the question I have in this regard. These systems are great and can be very helpful, and they can think about various ways also in cultural heritage, where you have I don't know, a tourist guided with an app through an historical building, and he or she could put individual questions, tell me more about this and that, and this would be great. But when it comes really to teaching and university teaching, the ideal would be still that you have this one-to-one constellation at some point with the professor, and where you then could develop ideas together, because it's not only that the students is profiting from it, because I'm also profiting from the questions of the students, and I very much enjoy it, especially if there's a smaller group where we have time to discuss very much in depth a text or a problem. This is the ideal which we should still maintain, and we have to be careful not to provide administrators with additional tools to even say, okay, we can outsource this to cheaper artificial intelligence systems.
Yes, thank you. Also because it could be very dangerous in a way. Also because history is very tied to power, to what happened in the past, to very important stuff, I would say. And so I sent you sort of mock-up about a platform that could help people to study history. And I can show it here, or maybe where is oh, no, I'll put it in the video later. I think you have seen the.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I add the picture, then Zoom thinks that we are 3 participants. So
okay.
Anyway, I have it here. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about a platform like this? Have you ever seen something similar, or like, do you know if any university is trying to, to make a sort of tool that could help students? Because I've seen some, but they are quite small, and I don't know why they didn't raise enough money. They didn't have enough.
I guess there was a big big also debate or a big effort to maybe to develop such systems during the COVID pandemic, because there you had a lot of course, of various forms of distant teaching and online teaching, and in some cases it did not really work from the side of the students, from the side of the teachers, and then of course it could also be help people to learn on their own terms in the time frames they prefer. So I guess this maybe then some of these developments also stopped with the need when also the pandemic situations eased a little bit. Of course, there are various systems also on various levels, maybe also not only on the university level, but also on the high school level, where I saw not necessarily maybe an artificial intelligence being behind this, but where you have a platform and then also students or pupils had the task to click through this and but this was always used in the situations I observed it in addition to normal teaching. So it was a tool, maybe for instance, parts of the class had to do some task within the system, and the teacher at the same time was dealing with a smaller group of students who had a special need or special demand, so that it was in addition or done in the afternoon or in order to fulfill some tasks, but never on its own. So only that this would be the only platform for conveying content. But I guess there's a big potential in it. Again, especially then when it comes towards big masses of data, so that also you could guide students through an archive, for instance, or through a big collection, so that they step by step on their own terms, in dialogue with an artificial intelligence, could explore the potentials, because that's often a little bit time consuming, and often time is also missing. So you can do a visit to an archive, for instance, like in Vienna, the big Haushof und Staatsarchiv, and maybe you have 2 hours. But then this I also got as a response from students, also from other courses. In the end, it was too much at that moment. So they were overwhelmed by what they saw there, hundreds of thousands of boxes and so on. And systems like this then could help then to navigate through such a collection, if it's digitized, for instance, and also to explore its potential, again, based, as you said, on the individual knowledge, on the individual interest, over a longer time, without the need actually going there, because also, of course, opening hours are limited. So I see, for instance, potential there to outsource, so to say, some of these things for which there is often not enough time in the normal course, to such systems, for instance. This I guess could be very helpful, and could also then help really students, for instance, to get a more intimate knowledge of how a specific collection or how a specific topic is organized.
Thank you. And I was thinking, how could we, let's say that a platform like this could be public in the same way that Wikipedia is public? I mean, how could we design, or also in a public way, in a cooperative way, a platform that could do that thing, so help people to study history?
Yeah.
And also, if you know any way to make it happen, that it became a real software, so it could be with I don't know, like being financed by a university, by a group, I don't know.
So of course, the one big question is where the content comes from, which you then provide or which you make accessible. You mentioned Wikipedia. Of course, this would be open content, and even in Wikipedia, sometimes people have to find problems to find their way around. But when it comes to organization and also financing, I think one very successful example would be the Transcribus network. Transcribus was originally developed in Innsbruck, and it's a very specialized field. It's about the decipherment of handwritings, of manuscripts of the medieval period, of the modern period. And these AI systems are trained by the individual researchers on their materials. So the AI system as such is open source. It's very transparent. It's not a black box. And then if you register on this platform, you can train your own artificial intelligence on your material. And this started a few years ago, is now a big consortium of more than 130 universities, academies in more than 30 countries in Europe and on other continents, with tens of thousands of users, of course, specialists working on manuscripts, but they have so far created more than 15,000 individual artificial intelligence. There's not one model, there are 15,000 different models, which were then optimized for the specific needs of the specific researchers. And this is now financed in an open consortium via these institutions in a way which doesn't make it dependent on big companies or big money, but it's an open community of institutions in the university education world, and this is such a success story which I think shows the potential to develop such an AI system in an open way, which is then accessible for everyone without any high costs. And also in a way where there's also a consortium which is democratic. There are regular meetings of all the members of the consortium. Everything is decided in a democratic way. Also the election of the board and so on. So that's also a counter model to what we otherwise have, like ChatGPT or so, where you have big companies behind this, where you really don't know who has control over the system, where it is about making as much money as possible, and that would be a counter model. And I think that would be also specifically, such a model would be the best also for something like you envision, where it is in the end to help students, to help people interested in history in a way also which is transparent, also where the content comes from, how the system works. I think this would be a model. So this Transcribus is for me an ideal or almost ideal model how such a platform could work.
Thank you. I've heard about Transcriptus, but I didn't know the financial things. And there is also a thing that is worrying me a little bit about how AI could modify primary sources. I'm thinking maybe in the future we will have primary sources that are only online, only digital.
Yes.
And then it's quite easy now to modify an image, and we could, I don't know, someone that has the authority could, I don't know, delete all and modify all the primary sources that has the word, I don't know, Berlin, and they put Milan instead. And so we would have the wall of Milan instead of the wall of Berlin.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there is if someone has thought about a solution, has a solution about this problem, about assigning the primary sources right now, because then in the future we will not be able to do it.
So I guess a lot of people have thought about this for decades, even before digital and AI. If you think about George Orwell, 1984, where it is largely about rewriting history day by day, and then on one day Eurasia is the enemy, and the next day it's East Asia, in this world of George Orwell, and that you perfectly can do this also in a non-digital way. And we also saw this in dictatorial systems, like there's this famous picture of Stalin with some comrades, and then eventually it's only Stalin, because the others have been killed by him eventually, and then also they have been removed from the image. So I guess that is possible even in a but it's of course much easier now with where you have these deep fake algorithms where you can artificial videos which look more convincing every half a year. They look more convincing, and of course, and as you said, a lot of what we produce now, that the primary sources of future historians will be largely digital, because what we produce now is almost everything is digital, emails and websites and so on. It's already also a problem to preserve this material. But I guess that's the big question in any case. It's the same question as how we deal with fake facts or fake news or alternative facts, as they have been called by one former president of the United States. In now, because that's everyday. That's an everyday phenomenon now, especially if we also now look at the war of Russia on the Ukraine, and when big images are manipulated and also fake videos are brought into. I think the only way really to somehow control is again that these systems are as open and as accessible as possible, that we are still able as democratic societies to control what is happening, that also these algorithms are open, that they are not black box under the pretext of being the property of any company, so that we know what they are doing. And there already has been some legislation, for instance, if such AI systems are used to make decisions or who gets a loan from a bank. This has to become transparent, because that's decisive for everyday life. And along similar lines, I think that's a much bigger problem beyond history, to deal with this phenomena and how to regulate this and how we maintain control as democratic societies over these developments. And this then also, of course, would be decisive for the future and the sources then which eventually make it into the hands of future historians.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there are two problems. Yeah, the older sources and the sources that we are producing right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I was thinking the blockchain system, since it's not a black box system,
yeah,
maybe it could allow us to save primary sources. So we have a sort of timestamp, decentralized timestamp.
Yeah.
And yeah, I see that just have 10 minutes. I don't know what's
okay.
And yeah, I was thinking about I have a couple of questions here. Yeah, first of all, if you have any book about digital humanities or about history and possible evolution of history that you would like to advise? Or?
You know, there's a growing number of books. There are some very good collections of papers which allow you to explore different fields. Of course, digital humanities is such a wild field now. It has become such an umbrella term for a lot of things. I'm especially working also on historical network research, and there's some very good introductions now. There's a very recent introduction by Tom Brookmans and Peebles into archaeological network theory, for instance, which is very useful in this field. So otherwise, I can recommend, there's a big website of the Historical Network Research Association, where you also have a big bibliography. So for instance, in this field, you can really resort, there's one big platform really where you can get almost all the relevant information. So in this regard, I can recommend this website, for instance. And in other fields, it's as I said, there are a lot of overviews, but I would recommend that this, for instance, would be a good starting point, this website on historical network research.
Thank you. And I was wondering because when I was studying history, I had some problems in a way about thinking what happened in the same time in different countries. Because maybe you read something about Italy, then something about France, and you have to. And I was wondering which kind of problems maybe you encountered during your studies, and if you think that a platform that could maybe show different elements on different timelines, and if they could help in some way, what?
Of course, it's that this has been done in printed form. So you have these big tables, sometimes covering an entire wall, where you have what happened in different world regions around the same. So there have been ideas how to visualize chronologies in a synoptic way for a long time now. And of course, you can do it in an easier and more appealing way on the digital platform. What I find, of course, interesting is when you really can start from one point, from one node, from one person, from one place, and then navigate through such a network of facts and connections. So we are at the moment, we are, for instance, establishing in a project a database. A project is called Entangled Charters of Anatolia, which is about a systematic survey of documents issued by polities in 13th century CE Anatolia in different languages. And this eventually will allow you to navigate from one polity to the next, from one document to the next, and see, okay, also how these documents are entangled. So a letter is sent from the Seljuk Sultan to the Emperor of Byzantium, and then another letter is sent back, and you see how all these chancelleries and developments are entangled. And this, for these digital platforms and digital databases, are of course ideal, because they allow you beyond the linear narrative to see what you have mentioned. So things happening at the same time, things being entangled. The digital platform is ideal, and there is a growing number of such systems and such solutions based on, of course, on digitized data, which then will allow you also to navigate through history in a more dynamic way, and also maybe in a more, of course, also in a more complex way than beyond linear narratives. So I guess for this kind of visualization and navigation, there are already several solutions, and this is growing and also provides a new insights also for students.
Thank you. And maybe the last question. Do you think that having this public conversation about, I don't know, designing a public platform could be helpful? So since we don't want a black box, maybe designing it openly could lead to something open.
So also the database system we use in this project I've just mentioned has been developed by great colleagues here in Vienna, and everything is open source. It's also in an open way, always in a dialogue between those participating in the projects and then also those interested in this content. So that's also much easier now to bring people together also in a virtual form, like we are now talking via Zoom. I guess that is the way forward. That's of course different to what historians were used to, sitting alone in the archive and then sitting alone in the office, writing big monographs, and then coming out of the office after 10 years with a new book. That is fortunately changing. Also the way how we study and how we publish collaboratively, and that's also the way how we should develop these new tools. So not relying on big companies and the systems and the products they may provide, but as a community, as communities of historians, of students, of those interested in it, we have to come together and decide how and where we use these tools, where we find this beneficial, and also in which way they are implemented, and also what content is integrated, how to make accessible different things. I think that's decisive, also in order to maintain also again our democratic control of what is happening, at least in this field where we have also expertise and interest as teachers, as students, as scholars.
Thank you. Just one thing, I was wondering, so some projects are made in an open way, but do they already make like any sort of live streaming, or like the one that we are having right now, like about designing a tool?
You know, normally now of course, it's for a specific project. You come together those who are working in the project.
Okay.
But of course, other platforms, there are, for instance, big platforms, also meta databases like the Pelagius project in ancient history, other tools, where there were big meetings also of people coming together from different institutions. So this is already happening, and I guess we will see more of it, especially also within the various networks which have been developed in digital humanities in European Union, for instance, where also specific standards have been established, so that also all these databases have a way that they eventually can communicate with each other. So I guess that's already happening, and we will see more of it. And of course, what we could do more is integrate also the students to a larger extent, because in the end, they are the ones who also then exposed to what we find out and then integrate in our teaching. Also integrating this more in our teaching, I guess, is also the way forward. Yeah, so that they are also not only then get presented the end product, but also already integrated in the process of producing or creating these platforms.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And we did it. We still have 20 seconds.
Thank you very much for your very interesting questions. Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to what comes out of your ideas also with the platform. And
sure, let's see. I'll send you an email if I have any news.
Great.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
See you. Have a good day.
Bye. Bye.